This picture reminds me that I need to lose a lot more weight. Namaste, Savaijanalai. This is my first visit to this country and or continent. And this is very interesting because when the first humans explored this land thousands of years ago, there is evidence that says that to cross the ocean, because this was the isolated land and one of the last lands to be explored and discovered, they crossed the ocean by using rafts. Now think about these early humans creating the raft and the sails and trying to risk their lives. Okay, is this good? Yeah? Okay. So they were trying to risk their lives to explore this land, but more importantly, to explore the possibilities that was here. And for me, of course, I didn't have to create a raft. I just flew in, took 12 hours, landed this morning, and it was an uneventful journey, unlike the ones that used to be there thousands of years ago. But I come here not as an entrepreneur or someone who has done something. I just come here as an ambassador and a global citizen. And through this speech, I'd just like to share my journey through life, the learnings that I've had in creating Tootle and the kind of impacts that we've made. But before I start and engage with all of you, I would like to thank the team of Thriving Soch, Samir, Neeraj, Subrath, and everyone who've come together to come up with this brilliant show. I think it takes a lot of courage, dedication, and hard work, which is seen in terms of your presence here and our presence here. So congratulations to the team, and thank you very much for organizing this show. You know, my journey starts many, many moons ago. I was born in the far western part of Nepal, in Doti. And we didn't have access to roads. It was because my parents wanted me to get a good education. They brought me to Kathmandu, and I think I'm one of the very few people who flew in a plane before seeing a motor car. And it was a persistence of my mom who wanted me to get a good education, which was not possible in that place. Now, you might think that as an individual, I have been able to be here right now because of my mom's decision, who herself is not very educated. Right. She didn't pass the high school. But she was persistent enough to have her children get education in a good place. To a degree, it's very true that I am here because of her. But more importantly, it is also true that it's because of her decision I went to a good school, where I met my wife when I was doing my graduation. And we have a son who is right there, who is taking my pictures right now. And because of that decision, my son also goes to a good school, and therefore he's with me right now. So think about a decision made by a woman that not only changes my life, but the lives of generations to follow. And it is very likely that his children and generations to follow will also have a good education and would create an impact to the world. So that is the power of a decision of a woman, and I wanted to make this point very loud and clear. So I came to Kathmandu. I did my school. I went to an engineering school. I started my job in a telecom company where I worked for 7 years. I did my MBA. I moved to a bank. And then I just quit my job. One fine morning, you decide to quit a high-paying job and just move on. And then I started my journey as an entrepreneur. And it didn't start with Tootle to begin with. We started on consulting company, a very evolutionary technology in terms of education and things like that. And all of a sudden, Tootle happened. And many people ask me, why did you quit your job? Why did you want to become an entrepreneur? What is the problem you wanted to solve? And as I look back, and I think about my decision as to why did I become an entrepreneur, what problem I wanted to solve, I wanted to think about, what is the real problem I wanted to solve? Did I always wanted to do this? And every time I go back on a retrospective and I think about what is that problem that I wanted to solve, the answer that comes is no. I didn't become an entrepreneur to solve a problem. I became an entrepreneur to express myself. Right? And that form of expression was missing when I was taking up job. So for me, entrepreneurship is no different to art. It's no different to music. It's no different to poetry. It's a way to express yourself. I could pretty much suck at dance, pretty much suck at music or singing. So my choice was to become an entrepreneur. Right? So it is a form of expression. So whatever you do in your life, make sure that you have your expression going in. And then people ask me about, okay, you've been a very successful entrepreneur. What is the secret to that success? Right? You've done well. You've created a brand. You're successful. On a hindsight, I don't think I'm a successful entrepreneur. And I don't think anyone can become a successful entrepreneur. Right? Because like any form of art, there's no perfection in entrepreneurship. If you create a music, I do not think that there is a perfect music that you create. Right? If you create an art, there's no perfect art that you create, to a fact that Leonardo da Vinci, when he painted Mona Lisa, which is arguably the best piece of painting till date, he carried the picture of the painting of Mona Lisa with him till his death for 16 years just to improve it. Isn't it? Now, if you think about entrepreneurship or art or music, any musicians here? There's no perfect note, isn't it? You always improve upon your last performance. There's nothing as a perfect art. There's nothing as a perfect dance. There's nothing as a perfect painting. So for me, success is always a moving point. But what is important to explore through that journey of entrepreneurship. And to explore through that journey of entrepreneurship, you need a certain mindset of being an entrepreneur. And one of the very, very important mindsets that leads to exploring that journey is an optimism that you have. It's the hope for the future. When I just started my journey as an entrepreneur, I was sitting at a coffee shop on the first floor of my office building in Jaulakhel. And a journalist from Startup Nepal, he came to meet me. I was with my tattered jeans, t-shirt, and I was sipping coffee there. I had recently quit the job at the bank, and one of the questions that he asked me was, Sixit Bhai, what is the difference between being a banker and being an entrepreneur? And that is a question that shook me to its core. And I thought about my banking job where I was very well paid. You know, I had a car that the bank gave me, 120 liters of petrol, you know, all the loans and available finances to buy a house and everything. But you know what? When I was in bank, I was inside a room, I was well dressed. But every time we used to go and have lunch, we used to find a canteen that would serve us food at the lowest possible price. Right. And that's true for all the banks in Kathmandu. I don't know how it works in Sydney, but you know, since you had to go out and lunch, you just want to share a lunch where you would pay 25 to 50 rupees. And I thought over it, and I told him, when I was a banker, my mindset was filled with scarcity. We had a scarce mindset because you always felt that you had to save for the future. Because you tend to believe that the future is not going to be as good as the past or the present. And therefore, if you look at all the bankers who are investing in real estate, who are investing in life insurance, why do they do that? Because they feel that tomorrow is not going to be better than today. They're scared of the future. The future is filled with scarcity. The mindset is filled with scarcity, and so is mine. And I told him, you know, I'm sipping this coffee with you in the most expensive coffee shop in town. I'm paying 175 rupees for one cup of coffee, and I don't have a penny in my pocket. But I do that because I feel that the future is going to be better than the past. So an entrepreneur's mindset should be filled with optimism, because we don't like to live with the nostalgia of the past, but rather we live with the hope and optimism for the future. And that is the hope and the optimism that we all need to live with. And if you look at the world today, when the presidents over the world want to make America great again, they feel that America was great in 1950 and not today. But if you look at the progress that we've made, the world is better off today than it was 50 years ago. And today is the day where we are living one of the most safest lives. We've cured a lot of diseases. We have not had a war for so many years. We've fought so many things. Yes, of course, we do have a challenge, but we need to live with that hope and optimism for the future. And that is what an entrepreneur can guide, and that's the world that we can create. And in that process of creation, Tootle came up. Right. And there's a story of this brand as to how Tootle came up. You know, we felt that people in Kathmandu have difficulties in moving around. Right? We have overcrowded public transportation. The taxis are non-transparent. I know. It's very difficult for people to move around. So we created this app. And then we thought, you know, why do we do this? What is the meaning of this brand? What is Tootle? What does Tootle mean to us? Is it just the ride sharing? Is it just about putting people from place A to place B? And every time I thought of that answer, no. Tootle was not just about helping people move from one place to the other place. It had to be something bigger. It had to be something different. And one fine afternoon, I was again in my office building. And when I was just looking outside the window, I see this young lady who was trying to find a cab. She was frantically moving left and right. She stops a taxi. He doesn't want to go anywhere. She negotiates with the other one. He doesn't want to go anywhere either. She tries to get into a public bus, overcrowded, she can't get in. And 20 minutes later, she calls up someone in a motorcycle. It could be her family members or friend or whoever, we don't know, I do not know. And she hops in and moves around. And then a thought came to my mind. In a city like Kathmandu, people do not have the freedom of movement. We're not as free as we are in Sydney to move around. And in the absence of that freedom of mobility, people lack a lot of economic opportunities. But if you look at the spectrum of people, who are the ones that lack this freedom of mobility? And we found out that people who are living with disabilities, people who cannot see, people who are visually impaired, are the ones who are the most challenged. Women, think about yourselves, all the ladies on the house, how difficult it is to go in a public transportation in Kathmandu. Don't you think that your freedom to move is compromised? So is it for my wife. So is it for my siblings. And so is it for all the brothers and sisters we have. And that was very important to us. While if you look at the Ubers of the world, where you look at the Olas of the world, or Lyfts of the world, they exist in an environment of abundance, where you already have established public transportation infrastructure, where people already have jobs. But if you look at cities like ours, Kathmandu, people simply do not have freedom of mobility. While people might think that Tootle is just about helping people move from point A to point B, for us, it's about enabling everyone with the freedom of movement. And it's also about creating jobs. And we've been able to create more than 15,000 jobs with Tootle. And we have many stories. We have a story of an earthquake victim who used to work in a bike workshop and now works with Tootle and makes $50,000. We have a story of Bhimmaya, who is a female. Her husband works in Dharan. And because she owns a scooter and she can move around, now she can pay for her child tuition. And she doesn't have to rely on her husband to pay her money. Think about the economic freedom that brings about with the freedom of mobility and the employment opportunities. Right. And we have a story of Chiran Paudel and a lot of visually impaired people who own massage parlors in Kathmandu. But they were restricted with mobility. They didn't have a dignity in mobility because they had to rest themselves into the shoulder of a friend or a family member to take them to a bus. But with Tootle, the Tootle rider becomes their friend and family, and they pay the same amount as you and we do, and that enables them with the dignity in mobility. So that is what we envision. But these kind of innovation also comes up with challenges, isn't it? We've seen a lot of challenges. You might have also read in the news the kind of pressures that we have with the government. Because as a country, we are restricted in accepting innovation. But don't you think that's also the mindset of people in general? It's not only Nepal. You would like to blame that Nepal is a country where we have a lot of red tape, we have a lot of challenges. Of course we do. But it's also a normal human behavior, right? In the 1890s, when the electric bulb already existed, the London Metropolitan didn't want to use the electric bulb. They still went along with the gas bulbs. We are restrictive in our acceptance to innovation, and that's happened globally. Now, more relevant example would be the goal line technology if you watch football, isn't it? Right? I mean, we had that innovation a long time ago. Still, people like to think of their own instincts and accept their own instinct than the technology. And Premier League just has introduced this season, while World Cup had introduced it a couple of years ago. We do not accept innovation, and that's true. Right? So, it is there. I mean, innovation takes time. You need to push innovation. You need to make innovation accepted. And to do that, changing the behavior in mass is very important. I was asked in one of the events, when I pitched for Tootle, I was asked, okay, you're doing well, it's solving the problem, but how would you save Tootle and yourself from the government and the taxi unions? I was asked this particular question, and my answer to him was, right now we are only doing 100, 200 trips a day, and we only have 10 or 15 bikers who are making income. But when we do tens of thousands of trips, it is not going to be 10,000 taxi drivers against Tootle. It is going to be 10,000 taxi drivers against 20,000 bikers who are making income, because access to income is a fundamental human right, and we're ensuring that. So if you believe in something, I think it is very important to push. And for us, we are doing this because we feel that we have a responsibility towards our society. Tootle is not just a startup, it's a thought process. It's an ignition to innovation, and that innovation should be caught up by a lot of youngsters, a lot of individuals, a lot of people who believe in innovation and who believe that they can change something, but with also a thought into their mind that change often takes time. Progress often takes time. Right. So it is our responsibility to create a progressive society. And if you look at Nepal itself, there is a lot of possibilities. A lot of possibilities to change things, not only on a local level, but on a global level. And that is some thoughts that I'll leave you with this evening. One of the very important points that we need to understand is that the global development that has happened so far, the industrial development, has only catered to the need of the top 1 billion people in the pyramid. The cars we drive, the houses that we buy, the stocks that we purchase, and every other thing. That's only for the top 1 billion people. But if you look at the world right now, there are 4 billion people that are coming up to the economic mainstream. But the challenge is that when these 4 billion people consume the same way as you and us consume, we are not going to have a sustainable world. Right. And therefore, our business models of sustainability, of progress, needs to change. So where are these business models going to come from? These business models are going to come from the countries like ours, the economies like ours. And if you look at the world today, while the West likes to believe that the center of the global economy is in the Atlantic Ocean, it's already moved to the Indian Ocean. And we are at the right center of this global economic change that's going to happen. Just for a simple reason that out of the 7 billion people that live today, 4 billion people live in Asia. And out of the 4 billion people that live in Asia, 3 billion live in our periphery. So whatever the mobility problems that we have in Kathmandu is the same mobility problem that you're going to have in Kanpur. The kind of mobility problem that you're going to have in Janakpur is the same mobility problem that people are going to face in Jaipur. The recycling problem that you're going to have in the cities of Kathmandu and Pokhara are the same recycling problems that are going to be down in India and China and Pakistan and Bangladesh. And this makes Nepal as a land of possibilities and the land of opportunities. And that is the reason, like the first human beings explored Australia, it is time to go back and explore our own country, not just to create business models for ourselves or the citizens of Nepal, but to innovate and incubate business models that can go global. And that is the global business model that we need to think of. And that is the reason why you need to explore possibilities by going back or trying to solve the problems that we have in our communities, not just to solve the problems for the local people, but how we can export this solution to the large mass of people in the lands of India, to Africa, to Kenya, to Bangladesh, to Pakistan, to China, and that is something that we can do. Right. And we should do that because as human beings, what moves us forward? Is it the job? Is it the salaries? No. Like Australia was explored, like Elon Musk is exploring Mars, like Tenzing and Hillary explored Mount Everest, we human beings are explorers and discoverers. It is the sense of discovery and exploration and risk-taking and challenges that ignites the possibilities. It is what ignites the passion. It is what allows us to persevere during challenges. And I invite all of you to have the same sense of discovery and exploration and explore the possibilities. Thank you very much.